This is Viewpoint, a public affairs program dealing with the problems and concerns of Mid-California.
Hello and welcome back to Viewpoint. I'm Hillary Backus. Today on Viewpoint, a very controversial topic, Nicaragua, and whether or not the United States should be funding Contra attempts to overthrow the Sandinista government. Today I have two very impressive guests with me, starting with Leonor Arguello de Huper, the Consul General to Nicaragua from Washington, D.C., and Mr. Liam Weston, a member of a lobbying group, Citizens for America. Thank you very much for joining me both. First, Senora de Huper, why are you visiting the Central Coast, particularly at this time when the Sandinistas are celebrating their 7th anniversary in power?
I was invited by a group of friends in Santa Cruz to come over and visit, and so I did. I came. It happened to be a couple of days before the celebration, the 19th of July celebration. So I was here, and I was invited to talk to different places. Under siege with an army that's been armed and supported and by the CIA and the U.S. government. There's no secret about that. It's very difficult to have any progress. But we have survived, and we are going to survive. It's a difficult situation. It's a difficult economic situation we're going through. And it's a very unfair situation, I can tell you. Very, very unfair.
Are you here trying to gather support to oppose the Reagan administration's position?
I'm not trying to gather any support or anything. I'm just trying to expose the Nicaraguan side of the question, and for the people of the United States to get another idea. I don't see how people can talk about Nicaragua and without going to Nicaragua and see the real. Talk to the people, mix with the people, see what it makes them tick. Otherwise, it's impossible to just express a grandiloquent opinion of what it should be done in Nicaragua. You see? We won't have that because Nicaragua, no matter how small a country it is, it's our country. We have a right to decide our destiny, and we're going to do it, and we're doing it.
Mr. Weston, perhaps you can address that question. Why do you support the President's determination to try and influence the way things are going in Nicaragua?
Well, the determination is to support the democratic resistance in Nicaragua. And let me make the point that I think that anybody can have an opinion on it and look into it and talk about Nicaragua, because the government's view is definitely not that of the majority of the people in Nicaragua, because they haven't had free elections and they haven't had any public opinion polls of a free kind to come in to judge that. And it's very easy for instance, the ambassador from South Africa to come and say that he, as a South African, is here to talk about what all South Africans believe for his country, but you and I know that you don't have to exactly be there to know that there are other points of view. And it's precisely the same situation with Nicaragua in the fact that there's a lot of diversity within the country. And right now, basically what the administration's trying to support is to give support to the democratic resistance, to put pressure on the government to either negotiate with them and to release some of the political prisoners and to try and open up the media and open up the free labor unions and stop repressing the churches and try and change the situation. Otherwise, I don't think there's any sincerity at all that Daniel Ortega will change his policies if he doesn't have resistance in his own country. And to hightail and run and not give support to Nicaraguans fighting in their own country, I think would be the wrong thing to do.
So you're saying that the Nicaraguans are suppressed, that we're in there trying to bring freedom and democracy?
No, we're not in there. That's not true. The Democratic Force, well, with the FDN and RDA and the others, is under an umbrella group called UNO, and it's a purely Nicaraguan fighting force. On the other hand, the Sandinistas have relied heavily on foreigners. They have some 10,000 foreigners now in the country. They brought in from Bulgaria, from East Germany, from the Soviet bloc, a lot of Cubans, and the situation is very clear in the fact that from the onset after the revolution, they were bent on consolidating their power and bringing in foreigners. And that's what a lot of the Nicaraguan exiles and so many who have fled Nicaragua now really resent, is the fact that they brought in so many foreigners into it when it really is a Nicaraguan question. And by arming themselves to the teeth and making it the largest military in Central America and supporting subversion to the democracies of the surrounding country, they've made it more than just a Nicaraguan question. They brought in a much larger East-West question.
Nobody cared what happened to the Nicaraguan people. Nobody cared whether there were any elections. Nobody cared that in 1947 there was a mock election where he elected a puppet and 26 days later declared him insane and sent him to an asylum. Perhaps you were not even born at the time, Mr. Weston. But things like that have happened in Nicaragua, and nobody ever mentioned them. Nobody ever cared. Daniel Ortega was freely elected president of Nicaragua. We might have had some faults in the election, yes. We don't have all the good things you need to have a free election, like a green card. Yes, the party participated. The only party that didn't participate was Mr. Cruz, because we know that there was a poll in Nicaragua just about three months before the elections took place, and that poll showed that Mr. Cruz, who had been led to believe that he had the love of all the Nicaraguan people, would only get about 18% of the vote if all the dissenting parties would go around with him. So that's why, after registering, he withdrew his name. You told me before that you have been to Costa Rica. I think you know a man in Costa Rica whose name is Jose Figueres. If you don't know him personally, you must have heard of him. To me, and not only to Nicaraguan, but to the rest of the world, Jose Figueres is the outmost statesman in Central America. And in the Americas, I would say. He's an old man. He's always been invited to the different elections, and he has stated that the Nicaraguan election was as free as the Salvadorian or as the Honduran election. He has stated that more than once. So I really don't know whether it was Mr. Figueres, ex-President Figueres, word against whose word?
Well, I think the former president of Costa Rica, Monge, stated very clearly, he said, in 4 years of the Sandinista regime, we've had more trouble than we did in 40 years of the Somoza regime. And as you remember, the Somoza, and he did say that, and Somoza had threatened to invade Costa Rica on several occasions and to try and bring up somehow that the opposition is favoring Somoza is just a red herring, and it's getting old. The people in the resistance against the government in Nicaragua are people who have excellent credentials as anti-Somocistas. And we could start with Adolfo Colero, who spent time in jail under Somoza. We could start with Ian Pastora, who helped lead many of the Sandinistas and took, in the National Congress, took hostage of the Somoza regime shortly before the end of the revolution. And I think to sit here and categorically say that you have empirical knowledge of what all the people of Nicaragua think is the same kind of audacity you find in the government. Why not, if that's the case, why not have an election where not only party members hold the ballots and people need particular cards to register to vote to show their affiliations with the party? Why not have an election where you invite the Gallup poll to come in and take a survey? The fact of the matter is that the people who have long been in favor of the Somoza or the Sandinista government are now not on that side any longer. Robert Lakin of the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, who has been a long-time supporter of the Sandinistas, has been disillusioned by their actions afterwards. Violeta Chamorro, the widow of the slain hero Chamorro, from La Prensa newspaper, a very well-respected member of the opposition to Somoza, now is a member of the opposition to the Sandinistas, and for precisely the same reasons that they were opposing Somoza, except now it's a lot worse. Now instead of 11 military bases, there are 63 military bases. Now instead of one federal prison, there are 11 federal prisons. And just the number of Nicaraguans who voted with their feet, who have divulged both countries of Costa Rica and Honduras, and you can't deny it, it's fact, and it's well known that some 250,000 have gone into Costa Rica to seek political refuge. Many who I lived and stayed with who couldn't go get medical attention because they didn't have their chairman of their block commission stamp their card that they were party faithfuls. Many people who couldn't register to vote because they don't get their card stamped by the party faithfuls. If the situation in Nicaragua is, so you can't have it both ways. On one side you say the farmer is armed and if he wants to oppose the government he can, then you say there's no success because of this war that's being involved in Nicaragua. You can't have it both ways. There is an opposition there of over 22,000 Nicaraguans. The Sandinistas, who was a popular revolution, had 7,000 people. The numbers alone speak for themselves, and I think that it's just impossible for anybody to try and speak with authority of what the people in Nicaragua want until there are free elections, until there are free public opinion polls, until the media is allowed to, the Radio Católica can broadcast freely, until La Prensa is opened up again and they can have free opposition newspapers. The law is very clear in Nicaragua what people can and can't do. They haven't been bashful about it. So I think until you can open the country up to more freedom of expression and the ability of all Nicaraguans to participate in the governmental process, you're going to have the problem of the war because they'll be there to fight for their freedom.
Is that true, Senora?
That's the way you stated. Let me tell you something. If we were not under war, freedom of the press wouldn't exist.
It existed before the war.
It existed before the war.
Before 1982, absolutely.
Before 1982, are you sure of it?
Absolutely.
And do you know when Red Christmas started? The first real attack on Nicaraguan soil that was called by the CIA Red Christmas. It was December 1981. All right? And we have been under attack ever since the beginning. From 1980, there were some attacks. I was in New York at the time, and I remember very well the training of the Somocistas in the Everglades of Florida, and they were already being trained, and they had a little shirt on that said, "Kile Sandinista."